Any invasion is a commitment, a responsibility. You're about to jump into hostile territory, and your opponent is not going to give it up without a fight. So before we get ourselves into all this, I'd say we ask ourselves a few simple questions, and in the meantime see some examples of how not to invade. Question 1. Do I have any weak groups? I'm stating the obvious here, but before you even consider invading somewhere, you have to make sure that you don't have any other weaknesses on the board. If you have a group somewhere on the board that doesn't have two definite eyes yet, then if you invade now, the number of weaknesses will reach a critical value. So don't even think about doing that. Question 2 actually has two questions packed into one. Is it too early for an invasion? And consequently, is it actually big enough to invade right now? Let me show you what I mean by too early. Let's say we have this position and black just played here. Now as white, do you have any desire to invade, let's say here? Do you think this can cross your mind in the game? If it can, then you have to remember that this is way too early. We're still in the opening, there are lots of moves out there that are worth 20 points or more. Invading right now is really unnecessary. And before I show you more examples, there's a good rule to remember. No invasions in the opening. I know, professionals were known to break this rule in the past many times, and it doesn't really make them any less professional. For example, this is a classic Kobayashi opening, and here as white, when this opening was really popular, many professionals would actually invade here right away. But even if professionals can do this, for us, the AI is suggesting a very simple alternative. No invasions at all. It's very nice here to ignore this invasion and just keep playing the opening. For example, enclose one more corner. Remember that any invasion is likely to lose you the initiative, meaning that it will end in gote. And you will only get a few points, maybe 2 points as a result. And if this is all of the expected profit, maybe there could be bigger and more interesting moves somewhere on the board. Now, let me try to tempt you with an invasion once again. In this position, black seems to have built a little framework on the right side. Now, if you're white here, would you invade? If you want to invade there now, you haven't been listening. That upper right corner structure is big, but there are still lots and lots of big opening moves to be played here. So even though that invasion is technically possible, it's a lot more comfortable for white to play, for example, like this, to keep the corner. It's a very big move. Or play on this side to develop the corner. Or maybe play here to strengthen these two stones. Or maybe even play a shoulder hit trying to build a moyo of your own. Any of these moves will be better than playing that invasion right now and getting yourself in trouble. And the last question, question 3, is how many directions does your invasion have? A good invasion has 2, a great one, even more directions. A good invasion also works as a probing move. You ask your opponent a question, and no matter how they answer, you have a plan ready for that occasion. In a sense, it's about how many functions your invasion performs. And we'll talk about functions and directions later in this course, and for now let me just show you one example. In this position it's white's turn, and there are several options available. So where would you play next? We're past the opening and there aren't any tremendously big moves available here. So maybe invade here right now? But let's think about it. If you invade here right now, this white stone doesn't really have any potential for development. It doesn't really attack any of the black stones, and since it probably can't live here locally, the only direction for escape for white is back to the center. And what functions does this white stone perform? Only one. Take these points away from black. All of these things make this invasion very one-sided and uninteresting. So I suggest that in an actual game, you refrain from this invasion as long as possible. And instead of this move, you may consider this. It looks small, but actually develops the corner and puts more pressure on the black stones. Maybe a more modern AI approach to attach like this. Even this move is more interesting. So if you've answered all 3 questions and the conditions seem to be bad for an invasion, stop staring at this invasion point. There's got to be something bigger and more important out there on the board. So put on your whole board vision goggles and think again. You know, invasions can look like a one-time action, but that is very, very deceptive. There are many examples of this in the history of mankind. Let's say the US war in Vietnam. It started with Operation Rolling Thunder in 1965, and what seemed like a simple enough thing at first turned into the longest conflict the US was involved in the 20th century. Or the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979, or many other examples from history. An invasion is easy to start, but that can open a Pandora's box of future problems. So if you're feeling that you just have to do something about the opponent's framework and an invasion seems too risky, there's one more option to consider that I will show you in the next lesson. By the way, you can also watch these lessons on our platform, gomagic.org. Except there, you'll watch them with interactive quizzes right within the lessons and practical exercises right after them. And if you enjoy watching these Go videos and you don't want to miss others like this one, go smash that like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and this is Go Magic.